guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to do a part 2 of what's it like to live with a 40-year-old car on a daily basis. So I've just been doing some shopping and we're just going to start the engine up. Oh. I just had to do it underneath this car park because you get to hear the exhaust. So yeah, the question of what's it like to live with a 40-year-old car as a daily driver? Well, it's mint. I love it. I really do. Obviously I can't put my foot down under here like I'd like to be able to. I can do that little bit and that's about as much as I can do. But yeah, so what's it like to live with a 40-year-old car as a daily driver? Well, it's brill. I said in if you've seen part 1, this is the only downside to actually being lowered, these big speed bumps like this, but can't actually get over these in my Mark 3 Astra, because Mark 3 Cavalier, because the Mark 3 is way too low. I can get over him in Orwin because it's not too bad, but yeah, no, I realised when I was watching back my last video about having a 40-year-old car as a daily driver, I forgot to mention like maintenance and servicing costs and that kind of thing. Because I think one of the things that probably puts a lot of people off having an older car is that they'd be worried about spare parts availability and that kind of thing. And one thing I will say is, yes, that is a very valid point with certain makes and models of car, because certain makes and models of car, parts will be scarce, parts will be hard to get hold of. But that's where there's one massive advantage with Vauxhall, particularly the Cavalier like this, and Novas and Astras, and because the thing is, they sold these in their hundreds of thousands, which means that there's still loads of parts around. And one of the things is as well, you know, things like brakes, engines, gearboxes, the parts which were used on cars that were made long after this. So like, for example, you know, engine parts, you know, alternators, the engine themselves, gearboxes, and things like, you know, bushers and things, a lot of them are interchangeable with later models. I mean, like I said, the engine in this is actually from a Mark 3 Cavalier, and it's a 2-litre 8-valve engine which was in different forms used in the Astras, you know, Mark 2s, Mark 3s, well, Mark 1s as well, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. Even on the Mark 4 Astra, even the Mark 4 had the small block version of this engine in it, the 1.6 small block. You know, it was used through the Cavaliers. The only time it was not in a Vauxhall was when you got to the Vectra, because by then they'd replaced the 8-valve with the 16-valve Ecotex. But anything up to that point, Calibras, as I say, Astras, Coltons, the petrol Fronteras, the Opel Manta 1.8 used the same basic engine as this. So many parts are interchangeable. And things like brakes, you know, like brake discs, brake shoes, a lot of them are interchangeable with later models. Now, one advantage with this is that this has got later spec brakes on it, so it's got the rear disc conversion done from a Mark 3, so I'm not having to worry about brakes from 1984, the front discs are actually from a Mariva. They're actually Vauxhall Mariva front discs. So obviously Marivas were made for many, many more years than the Cavalier. So because of that, as and when I need replacement front discs, I'll be able to get Mariva ones, which will be, you know, much easier to get hold of. I mean, I don't know, like the Astra in front, 57 plate Astra, I don't know if that would use the same discs as this has got on it. I mean, basically this uses Mariva discs because it's got the V6 spec calipers, but because it's 4-stud, they used 4-stud discs which were as near to the same diameter as the V6 discs, and it turns out the Mariva 4-stud discs are just about perfect. They're not 100% perfect, they're a very slightly little bit smaller on the diameter, but they work with the standard V6 spec pads. So again, bits are interchangeable. I need a new headlight because one of my headlights has got a crack in the lens. A stone flew up the other week and put a little smash in one of my headlights. And you might think to yourself, oh, 40-year-old car headlights are going to be so difficult to get hold of, but they're not, because again, you know, they sold that many Cavaliers in the UK. You can get UK spec headlights so easily and so cheaply because they made them in such big numbers. Now I will admit, if you go getting a 40-year-old car that's something quite rare that didn't sell in big numbers, then yeah, admittedly parts would be more difficult to get hold of. But here's a prime example. My Mark II Cavalier Saloon, Silvia, which is the one that got rear-ended, and unfortunately I had to sell last year, earlier this year. I needed a new rear brake cylinder. You know, it's still got the standard rear drums, and I needed a rear brake cylinder for it. So just on the off chance, I phoned my local car spares place, and they had them on the shelf. They had them in stock. They had them on the shelf. And that's a car from 1986. And my local car spares had rear brake cylinders on the shelf. Do you know the reason why? Because those same brake components were used right through on much later models of Vauxhall. So they cross-referenced the part number using the registration. They found that it was the same part that was used on lots of newer Vauxhalls going right through into the 90s, probably even into the 2000s. And because of that, they were readily available. So what I would say, like in the last video, I did say, if anybody's wanting an old retro car, go for it. But on the back of that, I will say, do be cautious what you buy, because not every 40-year-old car is going to be as easily catered for as one of these, as a Mark II Cavalier or any old Vauxhall. And I would also say a little bit of caution, because not all parts are readily available. So for example, if you bought a facelift Nova, a Mark II as they're often referred to, things like the headlights are very difficult to get hold of on Mark IIs. Mark I headlights are much easier to get hold of, but the Mark II, because it wasn't made for as long, it was only made, what, 1990 to 1993, they're not as readily available. You can't get hold of them anywhere near as easy as you can Mark I's, because Mark I's came into production in what, 83? Right through to 1990, so they made Mark I's for like 7 years. The Mark IIs, they only made them for a couple, 2-3 years. 1990, or 1991 to 93. I'm just thinking, because my GSI is a Mark II, and that's a H plate, and the first Mark IIs are on a H, and that is actually a 1991 H. So it may be only 2 and a bit years at a stretch that they made them, whereas the Mark I's, they made them for like 7 years. So you do have to be careful. Not all older cars are catered for as well as others. So you do have to be careful what you buy. But certainly, if you were considering buying something like a Mark II Cavalier, I would say go for it. You know, just have a little look beforehand at how readily available parts are. But another example, this engine being the 2-litre 8 valve, if you look back on the channel, I did a video where I needed a new temperature sensor because it has got the later fuel injected engine. One thing it does have is an engine coolant temperature sensor which operates the fuel injection and makes the richness of the mixture. You know, it makes the mixture richer when it's colder, for obviously cold starting. Now that had started to play up, so it was struggling to start when it was cold, and I had exactly the same problem with Sylvia, and I'm sure I had the same problem with my Nova GSI as well, and I know for a fact I definitely did with my Nova GTE going back a good few years. It was the first injected car that I'd ever had, which was my Nova GTE. I'd always had carburetted cars prior to that, and it was the first time I'd experienced this problem with a coolant temperature sensor. But the good thing is, all of those that I've mentioned use exactly the same part. They use the same Bosch fuel injected system. They use either Motronic or Jetronic, but a lot of the components are interchangeable. And because of that, the temperature sensors are something that are dead easy to buy off eBay, and they're like 10, 11, 12 pounds, you know what I mean? They're so cheap to get hold of. And that is another advantage of buying something like an old Vauxhall, because so many of the parts are interchangeable. You know, you might think you're not going to be able to get hold of the parts because, you know, the cars are so old, you know, you're not going to be able to get the parts, they're going to be difficult to you know, to get, but they just aren't. They just aren't. But anyway, as you can probably tell from the video, I've just pulled into Aldi. I'm going to do a little bit of food shopping. So there we go, guys. So thanks for watching part 2. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. And if you're not already subscribed, please do consider subscribing. I want to try and get to that magic 1,000 subscribers. I mean, I'm at 545, I think, as I do this video. So yeah, please do stick around, please do like, and please do share my videos as well, because that's a good way of getting the word out there. I am trying to do more content on old Vauxhalls in general, because I want old Vauxhalls to become as popular as like old Fords. You know, I think it's about time now that these old Vauxhalls started going up in value and I mean, they have gone up in value from what they were, but, you know, I want them to be seen and taken seriously. You know, so that's why I'm trying to really, you know, fight the corner of Vauxhall, because they do get a bad, you know, bad reviews from certain people in the press, and, you know, they've had the names tarnished over the years, and it's not fair, because they're bloody good old reliable cars. You know, get a good one like this old Orwin is 40-year-old and I'm using him as my everyday car. I mean, what does that tell you? You know what I mean? Let's get the word out there that old Vauxhalls are brilliant. Get a decent one that's looked after, maintained, you know. I mean, to be fair, I'm saying that I ain't given Orwin a service yet, and I've had him 4 years. I mean, he has had a bit of an oil change because I've kept having to top him up, because admittedly he has got a bit of an oil leak, but, you know, so it's not like he's not had an oil change at all. But generally speaking, he gets used and abused, and he don't really get looked after as well as I probably would or probably should look after him. But he takes it. He takes the abuse. And that's the thing with these old engines, these old 2-litre and 1.8 and 1.6 and 1.3, 1.4, 1.2, you know, the Family 2 GM engine. It's a good, pretty much bulletproof engine. And I think more people need to realise how good these old Vauxhalls are. So with that said, I'm going to stop waffling. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Laters.